Jake Gyllenhaal and Dan Gilroy have made a comeback and have released Velvet Buzzsaw on Netflix. With an artistic taste on a horror movie and a new addition to the genre, it doesn't hold back on the gore, the paranormal, the thought-provoking scenes, and the one-by-one targeting of each individual character until the spirit has got what it came for. What more could you ask for? A horror movie with an artsy 2019 twist. It's all over the streaming platform and the internet at the moment, and lots of people are talking about it. I'm sure we can all agree that we're excited to see Jake Gyllenhaal take on a new role. But is the movie worth watching? And does it live up to the hype that it's received? Well, let's find out. Before I go ahead, make sure you go over to my Twitter @BrainPilot_ and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. So without further ado, I'm BrainPilot and here is a review of Velvet Buzzsaw. Just to let you know, there will be spoilers. Obviously. The story. The movie opens up and you're following the prolific art critic Morph. He's a well-known face around the industry and is somebody that within the first 5 minutes you already know is an important person. Within the opening few scenes of the movie, we understand already that the art industry is based around a lot of money. And despite the fact that art is in the eye of the beholder and you should buy what you personally like, buyers want what the majority of people want. If there's hype, they'll buy. You're introduced to RHODORA, JOSEPHINA, PIERS and Joe, and you understand that they are all main players in the industry, except for JOSEPHINA. She just has a hunger to be in it. The story then starts to unfold as JOSEPHINA's neighbour, Vitral D's, drops dead and she goes into his apartment and takes all of his artwork, despite a warning from the landlord to stay away from it, due to the fact that Dees wanted to destroy all of it. This is where the questions start going round in your head as a viewer. You wonder why he wanted to destroy all evidence of his existence, and when you see the art that he created, the creepiness of it starts to come into play. JOSEPHINA plans to take the art and undermine her boss, which will ultimately lead her to fame and fortune. This is after showing Morph and him getting his fixation with Dees, as not only an artist, but as a person. However, RHODORA finds out about this and they team up as a pair, and start exhibiting and selling the collection by Dees. In a lot of movies, I would have ordinarily thought that this was a stupid way for the story to develop and an extremely unrealistic, yet predictable thing to do. However, I feel as though the way that the industry was portrayed to us and the way that the characters were laid down to us, it made it seem believable due to their personality traits. Once everybody started witnessing the art and purchasing the art, that is then when the horror element of the movie started to appear. All of a sudden, anybody that owned a piece of art started getting killed. One by one, in true horror style, they were picked off and brutally murdered. One thing that I think this movie did well was it had the ability of not making the movie feel like a traditional horror movie that would bomb in the box office. And I think that the stylistic delivery made it steer away from the genre and add a different layer to the movie itself. From the moment that the first death occurs, that is essentially how the story continues. More and more harrowing information gets found out about the artist, and eventually, one by one, anybody who has made profit or owned a piece of Dees's work, so essentially the main cast, they end up getting killed by another piece of art that they stumble across that doesn't belong to Dees. This is one part of the story that I thought was extremely smart. The writers could have easily just made a spirit come out from the art and murder them all. However, it was a spirit that possessed other pieces of art that they owned, and made other pieces of work kill them, even down to a tattoo. I thought that was smart, because for a while it was confusing until you realize that it is other art that is being cursed. Amongst all of this, there is one element of the story that I was slightly disappointed with, and that was with John Malkovich's character PIERS. At the start, it was all about him and how he's an extremely famous artist, and also how he's left RHODORA for John. However, I feel as though he goes off the radar for most of the movie. And I know that's part of the plot, but I feel as though his story arc was a bit rushed. I would have liked to have seen him included a bit more and truly understood the character. All of the deaths are gruesome and somewhat original. It wasn't your stereotypical just blood gushing everywhere horror movie kill-offs, apart from one. But they were all well thought out and smart. Like JOSEPHINA's death, for example. The fact that she didn't care a single bit about art and only cared about making personal gain from it, she ended up being killed by an exhibition that didn't even exist and eventually became a piece of art. Another thing that the movie did well was making you aware of all of the individual characters and having you root for them and not actually want some of them to die, even though partway through the movie you knew they were going to anyway. Overall, I thought the story was fairly interesting. As I said, it was a unique take on a horror movie and it provided 2 hours of entertainment, even though at some points the story did feel a little confusing, because it seemed like so much happened between the cutting of scenes. However, it caught itself back up and it didn't feel like I got left behind at all. The characters. Morph. Jake Gyllenhaal's portrayal of the art critic Morph was great. This couldn't be further from his role in Southpaw, and I've not really seen him play a character like this before. I thought this was an interesting character to follow, and the divisiveness that Morph had not only with art, but his love life or sexuality, you felt that run through a lot of the things that he did in the movie. He was definitely a likable character, and I was gutted when he was killed by the robot at the end. In all honesty, I thought he'd survive, but the fact that he compromised himself in the art industry, that wasn't going to go down well with the spirit. JOSEPHINA. JOSEPHINA was a character that in all honesty, I wasn't really a big fan of. I preferred her at the start before the fortune went to her head. But maybe that's what was intended. She was very two-dimensional, and I feel like the lack of emotion that she carried with her was something that put me off her slightly. She was the first to jump at a chance, and if she didn't get what she wanted, then she'd act like a spoiled brat. Although I say all of this, her character definitely did develop the most throughout the movie, so I'll give her that. RHODORA. This character was essentially the reason as to why all of the bad things happened to everybody, but she was the last person to feel the effects of it. If she wasn't greedy and actually appreciated the industry that she was in, and wasn't just after money, then she would have been spared, and would never have tried to work along JOSEPHINA, thus leaving her alive. However, I would say the portrayal of the character was perfect, and I don't think we were really supposed to like her. GRETCHEN. GRETCHEN follows the same path as what RHODORA did. She was power hungry and money hungry, and she wanted to assert her dominance over her former colleagues. I wasn't a big fan of this character, and I feel as though she had it coming the whole time that the movie was on. I think Hereditary's Toni Collette did a really good job of portraying the character that, again, we're not really supposed to like. PIERS. PIERS is a character that I would have most definitely liked to have known and seen more. It sounded as though he had an interesting backstory due to him obviously being a renowned artist and being a former alcoholic. I thought he would have played a more integral part in the story, but unfortunately, he didn't. And I think that's a real shame because I feel as though he would have added another layer to the story. Final thoughts. Overall, I would say that I thoroughly enjoyed watching this movie. As I mentioned, there are a few flaws, such as it feeling as though time dramatically passes by when a scene changes, and there being a lot of confusion when some stories are being told. However, I can look past that. It starts off a little slow, meaning it takes about 45 minutes for you to start to understand what everybody's purpose is, and for the story to actually develop. The acting and delivery was great by Jake Gyllenhaal and the rest of the cast, and I thought the main concept of the movie was there. It was an artsy take on a horror movie, and I feel as though it delivered with that. I would say that this movie is definitely worth a watch, and it will provide you with entertainment for 2 hours. And it will also show you a horror movie like you've never seen one before. But remember, at the end of the day, it's still a horror movie. Go and give it a watch. Take a trip over to my Letterboxd profile where you can see what films I've ranked. If you want to suggest one, then comment it and I'll rate it over there. If you want to say in what videos you see on my channel, then on the community page I've started releasing polls. Head over there and say what videos you want to see. As well, if you'd like to support the channel in a different way, then I've recently set up a Patreon. You can get your hands on some exclusive content that's only available over there. Take a look and see what you think. What did you think of Velvet Buzzsaw? Did you enjoy it? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.